Methuselah was the man who lived the longest on earth, spanning centuries. While the world around him grew increasingly dark, the last of a lineage of righteous men, he remained faithful to God even when few others did. Alongside his grandson Noah, he saw signs of what was to come and kept alive the hope of a divine promise. This is the story of Methuselah, whose simple life, full of faith, left a legacy that transcends generations. Subscribe to the channel for more exciting biblical stories and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any videos. Methuselah was born in a time of unrest. His father, Enoch, was known for his singular devotion and for walking side by side with God in times when goodness was becoming increasingly rare among men. The boy's arrival was seen as a divine gift, and Enoch, always attentive to signs from above, perceived something different in his son. There was a calmness in his eyes that suggested he would bring a profound meaning to his generation, something beyond immediate comprehension. From an early age, Enoch dedicated himself to teaching his son the words and secrets of the Almighty, showing him how to turn away from the evil that was growing around him. His father narrated ancient stories about the creation of the world, the beauty of the Garden of Eden, and God's promises to the righteous, planting in Methuselah's heart the importance of remaining righteous. However, there was a heavy feeling in the air. The elder said that dark times were coming. But just as Enoch was seen as a light in the darkness, so too was Methuselah. As he grew, Methuselah observed the example of his father, who at 365 years old had a mysterious end. Enoch simply disappeared. Men said he had been taken by God. Without fully understanding, Methuselah now saw himself with the responsibility of continuing the path left by his father. Each memory, each teaching, echoed in his mind like a mission to be fulfilled, and so he walked immersed in his purpose. While the world around him became increasingly dark, awaiting what was yet to come after Enoch's departure, Methuselah became a symbol of hope for his family and for those few who still sought the path of righteousness. He carried not only his father's legacy, but also the weight of a world that seemed to drift further and further away from God. With each passing day, he saw violence and corruption spread like a plague. It was a dark time where few dared to lift their eyes to heaven in search of guidance. Methuselah, however, remembered well the words of his father Enoch, who had told him that even if evil seemed to win, God's promise would never fail. There was a deep peace in the memories of his father's teachings, which he now tried to pass on, as if each lesson were a seed planted amidst the chaos. He knew that maintaining faith was like walking on dangerous ground, but Enoch's voice echoed in his heart, encouraging him to resist even when darkness seemed about to swallow everything around him. Time passed, and Methuselah became a father. Lamech, his son, inherited the same deep gaze that had once belonged to Enoch, and Methuselah felt the same responsibility his father had had. He knew he needed to prepare Lamech for the challenges of a world where good was always at risk of being suffocated by evil, growing wickedness, and so day after day he passed on to his son what he knew, the teachings his father had left behind, and the hope that despite everything, a greater purpose guided their lives, even if it was still hidden in the shadows with each passing year. Methuselah, he felt his father's absence as an invisible burden, something that impelled him to seek God's presence even more intensely. He remembered Enoch's countenance when speaking of profound truths, of mysteries that only he seemed to understand, and of the peace that enveloped him, a serenity that did not belong to this world. Enoch always affirmed that everything was under the Lord's care and that, one day, Methuselah himself would understand the purpose of all things. However, there was something he could never erase from his memory. The day his father departed, Enoch disappeared as enigmatically as his life had been. Methuselah searched for him, called his name, sought him among mountains and valleys, but found no trace. It was then that he understood that Enoch had not been taken by human hands, but by God himself. The elders murmured that Enoch had been spared the wickedness of men, led to the presence of the Creator as a reward for his faithfulness. While this disappearance brought him sadness, it also awakened in him a new responsibility. Methuselah knew that it was now up to him to preserve all that Enoch had left behind. In every word transmitted to Lamech, in every silent prayer, he sought to reflect his father's loyalty, certain that what was to come would demand all his faith, and even more. In the deepest part of his soul, he perceived that something grand was approaching, something that would transform the history of all the inhabitants of the earth. As he grew older, the world around him seemed to sink deeper and deeper into darkness. Evil spread through the fields and cities, and it became rare to find someone with a heart inclined to good. Hatred, greed, and violence almost became the norm among men. The little goodness that remained seemed to be suffocated by selfish interests. It was as if the earth had become a place where only sin flourished, and where the righteous, like Methuselah, were seen as strangers, figures from a forgotten era. Still, he remained steadfast. He carried with him the memories of Enoch, the ancient promises, and the accounts his father had engraved on his soul. He knew that every act of kindness, however small, held value in the eyes of God. However, resistance became increasingly challenging. The weight of human corruption was something never before seen, and at times he himself felt weary, burdened by the years and the emptiness left by his losses. There was, however, something more unsettling. Methuselah perceived signs that sent shivers down his spine. Strange behaviors, more intense storms, a constant feeling that something tremendous was about to happen. The wise men spoke of divine justice, of a time of judgment that was approaching. Although he did not fully understand what was to come, he felt his heart tighten, like someone observing the overcast sky before a great storm. In the midst of this somber scenario, Methuselah clung to hope. He knew he needed to prepare his family, to teach Lamech and the others the value of faith, just as Enoch had taught him. He perceived the decay around him, but also recognized that there was still a mission to fulfill, a purpose he would carry until his last days. Time passed, and in his old age, Methuselah saw his family grow. Lamech became a man, and soon he experienced the joy of being a grandfather, just as his father had done. He dedicated himself to passing on to his descendants the teachings he had received, the same teachings that Enoch had sown in him with such zeal. He felt that with each teaching shared with Lamech and his grandchildren, he strengthened the only force capable of resisting the wickedness of the world: faith. Methuselah and Lamech were discreet men, and their family understood that there was a silent mission between them, a purpose that kept them vigilant and unwavering. Methuselah watched Lamech with the serene pride of one who sees tomorrow in the next generation, but also with a shadow of apprehension. He knew that the days to come would be no simpler than those he himself had faced. The stories Lamech had heard since childhood were now passed on to his children, and thus the lineage of the righteous remained alive, like a hidden flame in the darkness. Then his grandson, Noah, was born. From the first moment he beheld the boy, Methuselah perceived something unique. There was a gleam, a purity in his gaze that reminded him of the days when his father, Enoch, spoke of promises and the Lord's covenant. Lamech also discerned that there was something special in his son, and together, father and grandfather dedicated themselves to teaching Noah what truly mattered, the truth that is not lost, even when the world seems to have completely forgotten God. As he watched Noah grow, Methuselah wondered if he would be the answer to the mysteries that Enoch had left unrevealed. In his grandson's eyes, he saw the continuity of what he had kept all his life, and he knew that, just as he had once listened attentively to his father, now Noah listened with deep concentration, as if he perceived that the moment would soon arrive for a new generation to assume that mission. Time passed, and the premonitions that Methuselah had felt since his youth began to manifest themselves in a more evident and somber way. Unusual signs appeared in the sky and on the earth, as if something was stirring in the depths of creation, announcing an imminent transformation. The winds blew more intensely, the night seemed denser, and at times the very air seemed heavy with an oppressive silence, a silence that the most sensitive recognized as a harbinger of something extraordinary. Among the villages, ancient prophets and sages began to whisper about an approaching judgment. They said that God would not tolerate human wickedness for much longer, that he would send a purification to remove the corruption spread across the earth. Methuselah, who had always nurtured a deep respect for divine justice, heard these words with a different weight. He felt that the prophet's warnings were intertwined with the last revelations that Enoch had entrusted to him before departing, never to be seen again. In his heart, He wondered if those warnings did not represent the culmination of the mission that his lineage had carried for so many generations. When he was beside Noah, he perceived in the boy the same restlessness, a silent understanding that the stories he heard were not merely moral lessons, but warnings preparing him for something grand and at the same time terrifying. Whenever the sky was covered with thick clouds, Methuselah watched attentively and knew that his grandson was watching too. Noah's gaze sought answers, and Methuselah, even in silence, understood that a purpose was unfolding before them. He continued to teach and watch, while the world around them seemed to dance on the edge of an abyss, awaiting the arrival of the unknown that drew ever closer, like a storm about to break. The years passed. As Methuselah aged, Noah became a man. With time, the bond between them strengthened, as if both knew, without needing words, that something sacred connected them. Methuselah saw in his grandson the same determination he had once seen in his own father, Enoch. And somehow he understood that the mission passed down to the generations was about to reach its decisive moment. Through the generations, the mission would find an even deeper purpose in Noah. From his youth, he demonstrated uncommon wisdom, a maturity that made him seem distant from the corruption consuming the world around him. He was discreet, vigilant, and listened to Methuselah's teachings with a receptive heart, absorbing every detail as if he knew that this essence would be essential for the days to come. While the men around him sought only pleasure, power, and violence, Noah remained silent, contemplating reality with the gaze of someone who understood that time was running out. In moments of serenity, Methuselah recounted to Noah the disappearance of Enoch, the mystery surrounding his great-grandfather's fate, and also the ancient rumors about visions of judgment that were beginning to echo among the peoples. Noah listened with a heavy heart, but with a conviction that seemed to emerge in the depths of his soul. He sensed that he was part of that story, that the signs around him were, in fact, a calling. As the years passed, Noah became a father, and his family began to grow, as if time itself were accelerating events, preparing the stage for something that Methuselah, deep down, already knew was inevitable. Even though he didn't have all the answers, the elder continued to guide him, increasingly certain that Noah carried a grand mission, a responsibility that would test not only his faith, but the destiny of all humanity. Methuselah, with his many years, had become a widely respected figure among men. His extraordinary longevity was seen almost as a celestial sign. Throughout nearly a millennium of life, he had witnessed the rise and fall of generations, the advance of wickedness, and the weakening of the goodness that had once sustained the earth. Still, his presence was like an anchor, a firm point of hope for the few who saw him as a reminder of purer times. When Enoch walked with God, Methuselah was considered a guardian of ancient wisdom, someone who carried with him the weight of experiences and revelations accumulated over the centuries. Among the elders, his voice inspired respect and prudence. Even in old age, he remained attentive, especially alongside Noah, who was now also recognized for his integrity and firmness of character. They walked together through the fields, observing the signs in the heavens and reflecting on the ancient promises of the Lord. Noah, who had grown up hearing stories and warnings, felt the responsibility of that journey alongside his grandfather. The world, immersed in violence and chaos, seemed to be rapidly approaching a point of no return. Now an adult, Noah was no longer just Methuselah's grandson, but a man who bore the mark of the same righteousness that had once characterized Enoch. Methuselah contemplated this transformation with a mixture of pride and concern. He knew that dark days were at hand, and that Noah, despite his youth, carried a burden that few could bear. On silent nights, when only the wind broke the stillness, Methuselah spoke to his grandson about God's long-suffering and the promises made to the righteous. Noah listened attentively, like one guarding a precious treasure, words that would need to be remembered in the most difficult moments. Methuselah's time was drawing to a close. At 969 years old, he felt his body tired and heavy, as if calling him to rest. Even so, he remained vigilant, attentive to the signs, and above all, to what he still needed conveyed to Noah. That year, the atmosphere seemed different. There was an unusual feeling in the air, as if all creation were holding its breath before something that was about to happen. There was an unease in nature, as if the world itself were on the brink of an irreversible event. Methuselah perceived the winds becoming stronger, the sky covered by thick, dark clouds, and even the earth seemed to wait in silence. Noah, now fully aware of the gravity of his grandfather's words, began to prepare discreetly, following what burned in his heart and the divine instructions that were beginning to reveal themselves to him. Methuselah watched him with a mixture of satisfaction and melancholy, knowing that his long journey had led him precisely to this moment. The moment when he would leave Noah ready to face what was to come. Deep in his soul, he understood that his mission was fulfilled. Soon, it would be Noah who would carry the weight of hope in a crumbling world. Then, in the same year that the skies seemed heavier than ever, Methuselah departed. His death, silent and serene, sounded like a final warning. The world, barely noticing the departure of such a singular man, couldn't imagine that, with his farewell, a new cycle was about to begin, a cycle that Noah would have to face sustained only by his faith and courage. With his grandfather's passing, Noah felt the weight of responsibility fall definitively upon his shoulders. That constant and wise presence, which had guided his steps and prepared him for that time, now remained alive only in memories and teachings engraved in his heart. The days following Methuselah's death were marked by profound silence. Noah spent hours reflecting on everything he had learned, aware that the moment so often foretold was rapidly approaching. Soon, the Lord's instructions became clear. In dreams and visions, he understood that a great judgment was about to befall the world, and that only he and his family would be preserved. There was something bitter and lonely about that revelation. Yet, Noah knew it was his duty to obey. It was his responsibility to fulfill the divine plan and build the great ark that would preserve life. Day after day, he dedicated himself to the construction. Each hammer blow echoed like a declaration of faith. Curious onlookers approached, observing him with mockery, unable to understand the purpose of that task. But Noah, firm in the faith inherited from his ancestors, persisted, guided by a conviction that surpassed human comprehension. He knew he was continuing the legacy of Methuselah and Enoch, and that the mission of his lineage was about to reach its culmination. The ark, immense and robust, began to take shape before the perplexed eyes of all. The constant sound of construction resonated through the valley, like the announcement of the end of an era. Alongside his sons, Noah worked with the determination of one who understands there is no time to lose. And as he advanced, the memories of Methuselah and Enoch gave him strength. It was as if the voices of his ancestors echoed in every gesture. Then, something extraordinary happened. The animals began to arrive. They came in pairs, guided by an invisible force. Under the astonished gaze of the crowd, they entered the ark without hesitation. The people, divided between fear and mockery, watched in disbelief, unable to comprehend the magnitude of what was happening. But Noah remained serene, his heart at peace and his eyes fixed on the promise. When the ark was finally ready and the sky was covered with dense, threatening clouds, Noah gathered his family and entered the great vessel. Upon crossing that door, he carried not only the hope of a new beginning, he carried with him the legacy of the righteous who came before him. He knew that, from then on, his life and that of his family would never be the same. From that moment on, their lives would depend entirely on faith and the promise God had made to their ancestors. Thus, Methuselah's journey found its conclusion in the waters that would soon cover the earth. He, who lived to witness the age of men and the dreams of his father, now rested in the memory of Noah, who carried the future in his hands as the first drops of rain began to fall, sealing the fate of all. As the ark closed, protecting Noah and his family, the memory of Methuselah and his long life remained alive. He, who lived for almost a millennium, became a symbol of patience and perseverance, someone who remained loyal in a world that was increasingly turning away from God. Methuselah's story reminds us that life, however long, finds its true meaning when aligned with eternal values. He waited and trusted, sowing faith in the generations to come, even without witnessing the outcome of all that he helped to build. Methuselah teaches us that patience is more than a virtue. It is the courage to believe that good has eternal value, regardless of the circumstances. He understood that, despite the corruption around him, God remained faithful to his promises, and this certainty sustained him to the end. Enoch, his father, had passed on to him the secret of walking with God in silence and faithfulness. Methuselah, in turn, passed his legacy on to Noah, who would face the greatest challenge of his generation. As we contemplate the life of Methuselah, we see the power of faith that endures, silent but unwavering. He didn't need to see the flood to know that his existence had a purpose. His story inspires us to be steadfast, faithful, and hopeful, even when the world seems to be heading in the opposite direction. Methuselah's journey, which spanned generations until it reached Noah, is a powerful reminder that God fulfills his promises. It is up to us to trust, to remain steadfast until the end, and to understand that our attitudes and our faith can resonate far beyond our time, just as Methuselah's life has resonated through the centuries. If this story touched your heart, like this video and share it with someone who needs to strengthen their faith. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to continue following other inspiring stories from the Bible. Together, let's discover eternal lessons that transform lives.